Sometimes the most powerful move you can make isn't yelling, chasing, or proving a point. It's walking away, not out of hate, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. Because when you finally let him go, really let him go, that's when something shifts. That's when karma speaks, not through drama, but through silence, not through payback, but through peace. And in that moment, he doesn't just lose your attention, he loses access to the best version of you. And that's when it hits. Letting go isn't giving up. It's not weakness, it's one of the hardest, strongest, and most self-respecting decisions you'll ever make. When you walk away from someone you still care about, it hurts. But it also heals. Because deep down, you know love isn't supposed to feel like confusion. It's not supposed to make you question your worth, your value, or whether you're good enough to be chosen. Yet so many people stay in relationships that chip away at them little by little, all because they think that walking away means they've failed. But holding on to someone who doesn't choose you back, that's not loyalty, that's self-neglect. Strength isn't about how long you can endure inconsistency. It's not about how much hurt you can swallow just to keep someone around. True strength is saying, "This is no longer enough for me," even when your heart still wants to stay. That's the version of love we don't talk about enough, the love you show yourself when you walk away from someone who cannot meet you at your level. You're not walking away because you don't love them. You're walking away because you finally love yourself more. We all want to be the exception to someone's emotional unavailability. We want to be the reason they change. We want to be the one they finally commit to, open up to, grow for. But what we often forget is that the longer we stay hoping for that transformation, the more we lose parts of ourselves trying to earn it. You shouldn't have to audition for love that's real. You shouldn't have to convince someone to show up consistently. Love doesn't need convincing, it needs clarity, and clarity often shows up when you let go. Letting go is powerful because it shifts the energy. It takes you out of the waiting room. It moves you from "I hope they get it" to "I get it." You see them for who they are, not for their potential. You stop living in the fantasy of who they could be and start accepting who they've shown you they are. And when you do that, something incredible happens. You begin to reclaim the time, energy, and emotion you've been investing into a situation that wasn't investing in you. That's when you start to heal, not because they apologized, not because they suddenly realized your worth, but because you did, because you finally understood that your love, your care, and your presence are not things to be wasted on someone who doesn't know what to do with them. And that shift in perspective, that inner decision, is what real strength looks like. Walking away doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough to stop breaking your own heart. It means you chose your peace over their potential. It means you finally saw that love should add to your life, not drain it. And that's a lesson people only learn when they stop clinging to someone who keeps giving them just enough to stay, but never enough to feel safe. You may cry, you may miss them, you may question your decision at times. That's part of the process. But the longer you're away, the clearer it becomes. You start to feel lighter, you start to sleep better, you start to come home to yourself. And eventually, the pain turns into power, the kind that reminds you you're capable of letting go of what hurt you, even if you once thought you couldn't live without it. That's not weakness, that's real, quiet strength, the kind that rebuilds your life from the inside out. The kind that doesn't need permission, approval, or closure, just the decision to choose yourself and keep walking forward. You don't have to do anything for karma to work. You don't have to prove a point, get revenge, or make them see what they lost. In fact, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all, except let go and move on. That's when karma steps in. Because karma doesn't need your help. It doesn't show up when you're busy trying to chase justice or play games. It shows up when you're too busy healing to notice whether they're watching. There's this belief that we need to stay in someone's life just long enough for them to realize what they did wrong, as if our presence or our reaction is the thing that forces accountability. But it doesn't work that way. The truth is, staying in their orbit, even passively, often delays their growth more than it accelerates it. When you're still texting back, still hoping for closure, still checking their socials, you're feeding the idea that they can hurt you and still have access to you. And if someone still has access to you, they don't feel the full weight of losing you. Karma shows up the moment you walk away with no drama, no explosion, just peace. Because peace is unsettling to someone who thrived on control, chaos, or emotional power. When you disengage completely, not to punish them, but because you've outgrown the dynamic, they finally sit with what they tried to avoid all along, themselves. Without your presence there to fill the silence, distract from the truth, or soothe the discomfort, the consequences of their actions become impossible to ignore. That's where the real karma begins, not in some cosmic punishment, but in the emptiness you leave behind, the one that only you filled, the one they didn't know how to appreciate until it was gone. And while they're sitting in that, wondering what happened or why they can't feel your energy anymore, you're already rebuilding. You're growing, healing, moving on. You've stopped fighting for something that only left you drained, and you've started choosing something that actually gives back to you peace. The irony is, people often only realize your value once it's no longer available to them. They don't feel your presence when you're still trying to explain your worth. They feel it when you stop showing up altogether. That silence is what speaks loudest, not because it's cold or calculated, but because it's clear. It sends the message that you're no longer available for half love, half effort, or half truths. And clarity is often more painful than any confrontation. You don't need to post about your growth. You don't need to send one last text to prove how much you've changed. You don't need to show up better just so they can see it. Because if you're still living for their reaction, you're still giving them power. True healing is quiet. It's internal, it's private, and that's why it's so powerful. When you move on for you and not to trigger them, you become untouchable. That's when karma works in your favor, not by hurting them, but by elevating you. Your glow, your calm, your refusal to play the same old emotional games, that's the shift. That's the reset. They might not admit it. They might never tell you, but they'll feel it. Not in the way you used to hope for, but in the way you never needed because you've already moved beyond them. So no, you don't need to act for karma to show up. You just need to heal, move forward, and let go with grace. The rest will take care of itself. The moment you walk away is the moment their real lesson begins. While you were there, they didn't have to face the full consequences of their behavior. Your love cushioned their inconsistency. Your presence softened the impact of their neglect. You may not have realized it at the time, but you were protecting them from their own reflection. Every time you forgave too easily, made excuses for them, or stayed quiet to keep the peace, you gave them just enough comfort to avoid growing. They never had to change because you kept adjusting, and in doing that, you delayed the very lesson they needed to learn. We often believe that our words can teach someone how to treat us. We think if we just say the right thing, show enough patience, or love them through their brokenness, they'll finally get it. But some lessons don't land while you're still standing in front of someone. Some people can't grow until your energy is no longer there to hold them together. They need to feel the silence where your voice used to be. They need to sit in the stillness you used to fill with care. Only then do they begin to understand what they've lost. When you walk away, not with bitterness, but with calm and certainty, you create a gap, a space they used to rely on. They don't feel it instantly. At first, they may carry on like nothing changed. They might even convince themselves that you'll come back, like you always did, but slowly that space begins to stretch. Days turn into silence, comfort turns into discomfort, and the loss becomes real, not because you punished them, but because you finally stopped saving them from it. This is the part they never saw coming. They thought you'd always be there. They mistook your loyalty for permanence. They didn't realize that love has limits, and that even the most patient heart will eventually get tired. So, when you finally decide that you deserve more, when you stop begging for basic effort and walk away, it stuns them. Not because they didn't think you had the strength, but because they never thought you'd actually use it. And that's when the real shift begins. That's when they're left to sit with their own behavior, without your presence to distract them. It's when they start connecting the dots. They remember your kindness, your effort, your forgiveness, and they compare it to what they gave in return. That comparison stings, not immediately and not always visibly, but deep down they begin to understand. They don't just miss you, they miss who they were with you, because around you they had a version of themselves that they couldn't access on their own. And now they have to live with that absence, but here's what matters most. Their lesson is not your responsibility. You didn't walk away to teach them a lesson. You walked away because you finally learned yours. You stopped trying to heal someone who refused to meet you halfway. You stopped putting your life on pause, waiting for someone to catch up. And in doing that, you taught yourself something far more valuable than anything they could give you: how to protect your peace, how to honor your boundaries, and how to love yourself enough to let go. Whether or not they change is up to them. Whether or not they regret losing you is their burden to carry. Your job is not to wait and see if they finally get it. Your job is to keep moving forward, knowing that the minute you let go, everything started to change. Not just for them, but more importantly for you. Because their lesson began the moment you walked away, but your freedom began in that exact same moment. When you let someone go who wasn't truly showing up for you, you're not just removing a person from your life, you're creating space. Space for peace, space for clarity, space for something better. As long as you stay emotionally invested in someone who's not emotionally investing in you, that space stays filled with tension, with guessing, with waiting. It's cluttered, it's noisy, and there's no room for the kind of love that could actually bring you peace and joy, because your heart is still trying to fix something that keeps breaking. We often convince ourselves that holding on is a sign of love, that enduring someone's emotional absence or inconsistency proves our loyalty. But what it actually does is create a cycle where you're constantly giving, constantly hoping, and constantly being disappointed. You become used to crumbs and call it connection, but the truth is, the love you want can't reach you while you're still tolerating the love that hurts you. Letting go isn't about punishing the other person, it's about making room. Because when you let go of what's not growing, you create the conditions for something else, something more aligned, more consistent, more nourishing to enter your life. People say you attract what you are, but more accurately, you allow what you think you deserve. If you're stuck in a situation where you're constantly feeling unseen, unheard, or undervalued, it's not just about what they're doing, it's about what you're accepting. The moment you say this isn't enough for me, you shift your standards. You begin to operate on a different frequency. One where your time, energy, and love are no longer freely available to people who don't respect it. And when you do that, life responds. Sometimes it's subtle at first. Your of conver, VEP, improves, your anxiety lessens, your thoughts feel less tangled. That's the emotional space clearing out. That's your nervous system finally breathing. And other times, the shift is more visible. New people enter your life. Opportunities show up. You start to see yourself differently, not as someone who lost a relationship, but as someone who chose their peace. That's the reward of letting go. It's not just about removing someone. It's about what you gain by doing so. You gain perspective. You gain self-respect. You gain the freedom to build a life that doesn't revolve around emotional survival. Because you weren't put here to fix someone. You weren't born to be someone's emotional backup plan or their on-again, off-again maybe. You were made for connection that's mutual, effort that's consistent, and love that doesn't leave you wondering where you stand. But none of that can enter until you clear out the space. It's tempting to hold on, to think, maybe if I give it one more try, maybe they'll come back different. But ask yourself, have they shown they can be different? Or are you hoping they'll become someone they've never been? Sometimes the love we imagine isn't with the person in front of us. It's with the potential version of them we've created in our minds. And you can't build a future on potential. You can only build it on reality. So when you let go, really let go, not just physically, but emotionally, you give yourself permission to stop waiting, to stop proving, to stop hoping for scraps. You begin to rebuild on new ground. And the most beautiful part is, you don't even need to know what's coming next. You just need to trust that whatever fills the space you've now opened will be better than what you had to empty to make room for it. Because it always is, every time. You don't have to say a word to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is your silence. Walking away without shouting, without pleading, without making a dramatic exit, just calmly leaving, is louder than any argument you could have had. Because people expect noise, they expect drama, they expect a reaction that keeps them in the center of your attention. But when you stop engaging, when you no longer respond to the push-pull dynamic, when you're simply gone, that's when the silence becomes deafening. When someone has gotten used to you explaining yourself, checking in, defending your worth, or asking to be seen, your withdrawal creates a shock to their system. It disrupts the pattern, it removes the control. Because the person who used to respond immediately, who used to fight for the connection, who used to show up every time they disappeared, no longer does. And when that happens, they're left with something they never anticipated: accountability. Your silence holds up a mirror. It forces them to sit with their own behavior instead of shifting the blame or avoiding the reality of their actions. While you were still speaking, still giving your energy to explain how hurt you were, they could avoid feeling the full weight of what they did. But when you stop talking, there's nothing left to distract them from it. That stillness is uncomfortable for them and liberating for you. It's easy to underestimate the impact of simply walking away. We're conditioned to believe we have to fight to be understood, that we have to explain our pain or defend our boundaries. But true power doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. It simply steps back and refuses to participate in a dynamic that doesn't feel safe, loving, or mutual. That kind of decision doesn't need to be announced. It's felt. And the beauty of walking away silently is that it centers the focus back on you. You stop wasting energy trying to convince someone to care. You stop draining yourself hoping for a reaction or validation. Instead, you begin to pour that energy into your healing, into your own peace, into building a life where you are respected without having to constantly prove why you should be. You become someone who doesn't need to be loud to be heard, because your absence speaks volumes. Think about how often people don't realize what they have until it's gone. While you're present, they assume you'll always be there. While you're still talking, they think they still have access. But once you go quiet, once you walk away and don't look back, they're left to deal with the void they created. And that silence becomes the echo of every word you no longer need to say. What makes silence so impactful is that it's not reactive. It's intentional. It's not about giving the cold shoulder or playing games. It's about stepping fully into your self-worth and realizing that if someone couldn't hear you when you were giving your best, your silence will say everything they refused to listen to. That's not manipulation. That's maturity. Eventually they'll notice. not because you posted something dramatic. Not because you tried to make them jealous, but because the energy you used to bring is no longer there. The version of you that gave endlessly is no longer available, and whether they admit it or not, they'll feel that shift. They'll feel what it's like to lose someone who was real, present, and loving, but by then it won't matter because you've already moved on. You've already started building a life that doesn't revolve around being heard by someone who never wanted to listen. And in that silence, you finally hear the only voice that truly matters, your own. Healing is the quietest kind of power. It doesn't announce itself, and it doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It just happens, slowly, steadily, underneath the surface, as you begin to reclaim parts of yourself you once gave away too easily. And when you truly heal, not just on the surface but deep in your core, you stop needing closure, validation, or revenge. You stop needing to know if they miss you, regret losing you, or finally understand what they threw away. Because you're no longer looking for answers outside of yourself. You've already found peace within. That's the real karma, not what happens to them, not whether they feel your absence or lose sleep over you, but the fact that you no longer carry their weight in your mind or your heart, that you can hear their name and feel nothing, that your joy is no longer attached to their behavior, and that shift, that's what hits the hardest. Because while they're stuck in the same habits, the same emotional cycles, maybe even the same relationships, they're not growing. But you are. You're building something real within yourself, confidence, clarity, wholeness. There's a version of healing that people romanticize, where you're suddenly successful, glowing, looking amazing, and they come crawling back. But real healing doesn't even care if they do, because once you're healed, you don't want them to come back. Not because you're bitter, but because you finally see clearly. You remember how much it hurt to be confused. You remember how small you had to make yourself just to fit into their world, and you know now that you never want to feel that way again. Healing makes their return irrelevant. It puts the power back in your hands not to reject them, but to simply not need them. That's what true karma looks like. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, calm, complete. It's you living your life without a trace of the chaos they once brought. It's waking up and realizing you don't even think about them anymore. You're not stalking their page. You're not wondering what they're doing. You're not replaying old conversations in your head. You're just free. That's the kind of healing that can't be faked. It's not a highlight reel. It's peace. And peace is the one thing they couldn't give you, but the one thing they now know you have without them. The most incredible part is when you look back and realize how much of yourself you almost lost, how close you were to settling, how much energy you spent trying to get someone to treat you the way you already deserved to be treated. And now you're so far from that version of yourself, it's like watching someone else's life. You're no longer surviving a heartbreak, you've outgrown it. You're no longer proving your worth, you embody it. And the version of you that emerges on the other side of that healing, that's the version they'll never get access to again. You didn't have to burn bridges. You didn't have to send the angry message or get even. You just had to walk away and do the work, the inner work, the painful, real, daily practice of choosing yourself. And that choice repeated over time becomes your new foundation. You don't need anyone to see it, approve of it, or validate it. Because you feel it. You live it. The irony is, by the time they realize what they lost, you've already realized what you gained. You stopped making them the center of your healing and became the center of your own growth. You didn't wait for karma to make them pay. You let your peace be the proof that you've already won. And that's the kind of healing no one can undo. So in the end, it's not about whether they regret losing you, or whether karma catches up to them in some dramatic way. It's about the quiet, powerful transformation that happens when you finally let go, When you stop chasing closure, stop waiting to be chosen, and start choosing you. The real karma isn't what happens to them. It's the peace, clarity, and strength you step into the moment you decide you're done settling for less than you deserve. You become unavailable to the chaos, unreachable by the past, and the version of you that rises from that choice. That's the one who doesn't need to be seen to know her worth, because she already feels it in every step she takes forward. That's when karma speaks loudest through your freedom.